Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Society of the Eternal Mile podcast. I'm your host, Noah Sias. On today's episode, we're joined by vocalist Dustin Mitchell. You may know of his work from Filth, Invoker, and Impale the Betrayer. Follow the show on social media, SOTEM Podcast. Subscribe where you listen. Leave a review on iTunes or Facebook if you have a moment. And show your support on Patreon at patreon.com/SOTEM Podcast. So no cause for alarm here, but the show's going to be taking a small break for a couple weeks. I'm in the middle of transitioning into third shift with my new job, and I've been grinding the show now for 23 weeks straight. I'd like to transition into my new schedule so that way the show can pick up business as usual. That being said, there will still be episodes for the time being, just smaller. So thanks for being understanding on all this and looking forward to getting situated for the show to get back in full rotation. On to today's show. My first interaction was on the, you guessed it, Vertebroken Tour, summer of 2015. As it's been with David Gantt and Josh Bearden, last date in Houston at Walters Downtown. 2 tour packages lined up for one super stacked lineup. 2 of the Gantt Bands played, Filth and Invoker. End of the night, we're all packing up, and I hear this deep southern drawl coming my way, and it was Dustin coming to say good set and to chat briefly. Fast forward to March of 2016 on the Macho Man Tour, and Invoker was out for the second half of that run. And then summer of 2017, Filth was on the second half of the Are You Afraid of the Gent tour as well. I think I can say without a doubt, Dustin is literally one of my top 3 favorite people that I've been on the road with. We've had some real conversations killing time, and we've laughed so hard till it was miserable to laugh anymore. He's also one of the most genuine, down-to-earth dudes you can meet on the road. There's a reason why Dustin and the Gantt camp as a whole hold the spot as family to me. Great conversation and lots of laughs on this one. Hope you all enjoy it. Here's my conversation with Dustin Mitchell. Dustin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, man.
When did you first get involved with music?
I was around 5 when I got heavily into music, like being a part of like community choirs and church choirs. But as far as like heavy music goes, I was around 13, and I had a friend named Jason, and it was this goth kid, and he would always like bring me stuff to check out, stuff that was out of the norm for me. And he just got me into heavier stuff, like started off with Kill Switch Engage, and then like Demo Borgir, and just went from there, really.
Who were some of your early influences?
Well, Demo Borgir, and a lot of black metal, really. Behemoth, Dark Throne, and then I got into more death metal stuff like Obituary and Morbid Angel.
If you had to name one record that changed everything for you, what would it be?
Nocturnal by the Black Dahlia Murder. The musicianship on it, but the main thing for me was Trevor's lyrics, because they were so vivid and they like painted a picture. It was like watching a horror movie.
So tell us about some of your early bands.
Oh man, like I was in this band called A Car Show back in 2011. We never did too much of anything. We played some big local shows and opened for like big slam and brutal death metal bands. But as far as touring, we never got around to that. It was first band type stuff. We tried, but we had no idea what the hell we were doing.
Sure. Did you have any other ones before meeting David?
I filled in for this vocalist named Josh Kroom for this band called Before the Ancients. And that was my first taste of what tour was like. But that was pretty much the only other band I had been in, and taught me a lot as a vocalist, like gave me things to expect when I went on the road with David, but being in that compared to being on the road with Invoker or Filth didn't even compare.
Sure, sure. How would you describe your local scene?
Starting to make a comeback, have more younger bands starting to pop up, but within the past few years, it seemed like it was a dying scene, but it started to come back, and we've got like bands popping up from Charlotte, North Carolina again, and Nashville, and then you got Greenville. There's a new venue opening up in Greenville, South Carolina, and it's starting to come back in a big way.
Any locals that people should be checking out?
Yes, there's a band called Fractured Frames, and they're pretty sick. They're a progressive metalcore band, and there's also a Violent Life, Violent Death. They're like a power violence grindcore band.
When did Invoker come into play for you?
I was still in a car show, and it was around, I want to say, the end of 2013 when David had approached me, and it started off, it was just going to be a studio project, and he wanted to get me and John Rad from our original vocalist, John Rad. He was in a band called Perception at the time, and we were pretty close. And he just wanted to put us on something that he had done, because both of our bands weren't really doing too much at the time. And David is the man with the plan. So he asked me if I'd be down to come and do a studio project with him and John, and that's the way it's been ever since. We didn't really expect it to go as well. In my mind, I didn't expect it to go as far as it did.
Crazy that it went from, just being a potential studio project to a big name kind of in the underground scene.
Yeah, I never had any idea I never imagined touring again, like after the first time I toured Before the Ancients, and especially after just being told it was going to be a studio project, and then people in the local scene started digging it, and we played our first show, and then David told me we were going to start touring, and I was like, okay, what else am I doing?
So what was it like initially going into a 2-vocalist band?
It was new for me. It was it wasn't necessarily strange, but it was, I don't know, it was fun because I had never done anything like that before. And me and John knew each other pretty well because our bands had played with each other, and it was a learning experience though. It was like learning how to work with someone, and how learning how to write to someone else's preferences, and how to listen to their voice and what they can do, and adapt what you can do to them.
So the band has 3 releases: 2014's Death is Inevitable, 2015's Devolve, and 2017's Resist. As I mentioned on David's episode, I seriously listen to Resist at least once a week. It's a noticeable step forward for the band as a whole, and vocally, that release hits some new but welcome territory as well. And we've talked about the music side on the show before, so let's switch it over to the lyrical side. What was the influence lyrically for Resist?
The influence from Resist, and it's pretty much everything that was going on in the United States at the time. Like me and Zared trying to stay on the up and up with politics and follow it pretty closely. And luckily, I had some help with him during the writing process. And lyrically, it's just telling people to stand up for what you believe in, and not to become a pawn.
And I think that's especially in this current political climate, that's more apparent than ever. What's your favorite track?
My favorite track is Walls. It reminds me a little bit of like some of the tracks off from Death is Inevitable. It's really fast paced, and then just what the song's about. It's I know when people hear it, and like a lot of people, may think that it's about, the wall that Donald Trump was going to build, but it's not about that. It uses that imagery as well, but it's about how we as citizens of the United States put up walls and barriers, and how we don't understand each other. We don't begin to try and understand each other because it's out of our comfort zone.
So how's the response been to Resist so far?
It's been good. Like it was kind of surprising at first because we had took some time off, and then just I don't know. I guess people still wanted it. People still dug it, and it makes me happy because that was the first thing that I ever like was able to put my name on and be a part of. Really, like as a release, like well, the band anyway. You know, the band coming back and being able to put out that album a few years later, and people still being into it and digging it.
What's going on for you guys in Invoker for the rest of the year?
We're not doing a whole lot right now because we're still me and David have been working on the new Filth record, but in we're thinking about the fall. We're probably going to be going back and recording some new Invoker stuff.
So let's switch it over to Filth. How did that come about?
It's kind of funny because it came about this. It kind of came about the same way as Invoker did. Me and David were, just we were on tour, and we were just listening to other bands and stuff, and we were like, "Damn, this is pretty cool." We wanted to branch out a little bit and try something different, and just for fun. And we ended up going to the studio, and we recorded "Tales from the Gutter," and it just kind of took off beyond our expectations.
So the band has two releases, as you've touched on. You have 2015's Tales from the Gutter, and then 2017's God Has a Plan. Again, recapping a little bit from David's episode, Tales from the Gutter has a crazy cult following. It shows up on so many subgenre Facebook groups, and you have actually become a reference point in the guttural community, which is absolutely insane. Did you have any
It is
idea it was going to
awesome.
blow up like that?
Never. Like I'm I'm just honored that people would even consider me or listen to my band that much, like
Yeah, it's crazy. Like even in the most like, you'll have like what's the big one, like gutturals and pig screams and all that kind of stuff, whatever that big group is, and they'll be talking about Filth. And then you'll have ones that have like hardly anybody following it, and they're talking about Filth. So like, congrats, man. That's one hell of a way to get your name out there.
thank you, man. Like it's crazy, dude. Like I just try and do what I can to the best of my ability, and granted, there are people out there that I look up to that are way better than me. I'm just glad that people feel the way that they do, and they consider me as a good vocalist.
So God Has a Plan is a step forward, a lot like Resist was for Invoker. Way more refined and way more pissed off. Also a very bold statement from the album art. What was the influence for writing God Has a Plan?
A lot of things that were going on in my life and some of my friends' lives, just really personal relationships. Really,
What's your favorite track?
my favorite track from God Has a Plan. That's kind of hard because
It's kind of like the whole thing.
pretty much I do. I love that EP. That's probably one of favorite my favorite thing that we've ever done together, me and David. Really, if I had to pick a favorite, it would probably be Dark End.
So you guys had two pretty big heavyweights for guest spots. You had Adam Warren from Oceano, and you also had Trevor from the Black Dahlia Murder. How was that getting to work with them?
That was amazing because those are two of my favorite vocalists of all time. Like Trevor being, Trevor from Black Dahlia Murder. That's my favorite band of all time. And Oceano, I take a lot of influence from Adam Warren vocally. It was really cool that they were a part of it.
Is there anybody that you hope to work with in the future for guest spots with Filth?
Vincent from the Acacia Strain
That
would be a
that would
dream
be
come
sick.
true.
That would be sick. So how's the response been so far to God Has a Plan?
It's been really good. Like it feels like it's been a long time since we put it out, but it in reality, I guess because the process of recording it and touring, it feels like it's been a long time since we put it out, but people are still like finding it and listening to it, and I get people saying that they just found Tales from the Gutter from the first time, and then they find out about God Has a Plan, and it's insane, man, because people are still like finding it, even though it feels like it's been out for a minute now, and it's just positivity through the roof, and that's something it's something cool to find within the metal scene, because as you know, people tend to criticize things that are on the upswing. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, everybody's ready to tell us that our bands suck and that you do inhales.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's dumb and funny enough. Talking about how it feels like you released it forever ago on Greg's episode, which for people who are listening, that is the producer for God Has a Plan, and we got into a discussion about uh how when new music comes out, it's literally not new music to the band. And in some cases, you could have tracks that are literally years old. And so the enthusiasm on release day isn't necessarily the same as the enthusiasm as like, oh, hey, we finally finished the song. So I totally get what you mean there. So what's in store for Filth for the rest of the year? I know you mentioned that you guys are working on your full length. Anything else in store?
Yeah, we've got a few things, a few more tours in the works, you know, that are well, they're still be in the process being worked on, so I can't really talk too much about those, but it's you'll be seeing us this year.
Perfect. I will do a quick mention of Impale the Betrayer. That's primarily David's wheelhouse until just recently. How did you become involved with that project?
From back when I was in a car show, we were you know, buddy bands and stuff. As Justin, I've known Justin for years and years and years, and meeting David, you know, we got closer, and David had asked me, because Justin had stepped down from doing vocals. He asked me if I wanted to be a part of Impale, because I wrote Swarm for for Impale, and David just liked how it turned out, and he once Justin stepped down, he asked me to be a part of it, and I've always wanted to write like a you know, deathcore with like old school like deathcore, like with just outlandish lyrics, you know, just to have fun.
And you're on one of the band's releases, 2017's Infernal. What was the writing process like for that?
Well, I went into it. It was a when David originally asked me, I didn't have a lot of time to prepare for it. So when we went, is they David would come back from the studio. We go to the studio, and then we come back, and David would send me the tracks, and I would just listen, and I just listened to him over and over again, and just that's how it came about. It that was heavily influenced by like the occult and stuff, and you know, and like the movie The Witch had just come out, and I'm a big fan of it, so I kind of tried to write, you know, like fantasy, but you know, to the with an occult aspect to it, and you know, typical deathcore lyrics.
Do you have a favorite track from that release?
The Wicker Tree. It's got elements of slam in it. It's got elements of black metal in it, and it's based on a true story that happened in North Carolina.
So I know that's more of a local gig for you guys, but how's the response been to Infernal?
We haven't really done too much with the record. We just kind of did it for fun. But a lot of the fans of like Invoker and Filth, they checked it out just because it's something that me and David have been a part of, and the responses seem pretty good. Like, because we haven't played a show with the new lineup for Impale yet. But hopefully, we'll be doing that soon.
Okay, so this is where we normally talk about gear and rig setups, but since you're a vocalist, we'll be going a different direction with it. Where do you pull inspiration for writing?
Well, it depends really. Like when I'm writing for different projects, like for Filth, it's always been like it's always been really personal. But I tend to get into that mood to bring it out. I listen to a lot of like goth rock and like doom metal to just put myself in that mood to give me inspiration to write and pull it out. The inspiration from Invoker comes purely from the media itself.
Right. Kind of following the headlines.
Yeah. Trying to stay on the up and up about what's going on. It's a scary thing, but it serves well though, because it gives me a lot to write about.
Are there any subjects you'd like to cover in the future?
With Invoker, there definitely are, because I don't know, I'm a bit of a conspiracy nut, if you will, if you'll say. Growing up, my mom and my dad, they both worked with children, and I love kids, and I wanted to write a song about. Have you heard of Pizzagate?
I've definitely heard of that before, but I'm not familiar with it.
Pizzagate is the theory or conspiracy that there is a large, vast network of people who harm children, who sell them into trafficking, and I just kind of wanted to bring awareness to that, because it's something that happens like on a day-to-day basis, and I've always wanted to write a song about that, just to put it out there, just to get it in people's minds that this is something that happens.
Sure. Yeah, I think that would be a noble thing, especially for myself coming from a city that the tough part of town for us is definitely up there for the state of Michigan for like sex trafficking and stuff like that. You know, there's evil shit out there that's just deplorable.
It's disgusting. Like, anyone that would want to harm a child, like someone who's purely innocent, you know. And I've been doing a lot of research and just trying to delve deep into it, and I just want to have some form of an outlet to put it out. I'd like to bring awareness to it through like Invoker, since Invoker is like our more political and socio-political type project. I'd like to put a song out there just for people to listen to, and take something away from it and to be aware.
All right, opinion question. What's something that you see young or inexperienced vocalists doing that drives you nuts?
Oh man, okay. Well, the main thing is, if you can't do something live, don't attempt it on a record.
This is true.
And it's like you get on stage, and then they're maxed out, and they're just like, they're yelling at the top of their lungs, so it's like a screech. But when you have them at a decent volume, you can't hear them, and they're constantly telling you to turn them up. It really irks me to see a vocalist do that, and it's almost like the way. I wish you could see me right now, but it's the way you hold a microphone.
Oh yeah.
It's like, it's mainly something that that happens the hardcore vocalists do. They hold it at the tip, and it damages cables and potentially can damage your mic. I don't know. It's just little stuff like that. It gets on my nerves when I see it.
I know for me, and I'm not a vocalist, but something that always drives me nuts too is when people like say some of the dumbest shit, like to the audience, like in between songs. You know, it's one thing to be like caught up in the moment of passion, like in the middle of a song to yell something out, but it's another thing to just be like, I guess one thing that drives me nuts the most is when like the vocalist, I don't know, I hate it when vocalists kind of like demean the crowd a little bit, and it's like, how you fuckers doing tonight and stuff like that. It's like, man, I'm not a fucker. You know what I mean, though?
Yeah. I'm like, if you're gonna talk dirty to me, at least wine and dine me first.
All right, so let's have a discussion about the Eternal Mile. When was your first tour, and what was the lineup?
My first tour was in June 2011, and it was I was filling in for this vocalist Josh Kroom and his band Before the Ancients, and it was us and a band called Psyopsis from Charlotte, North Carolina.
And I think you've already kind of touched on this, but feel free to elaborate. Good, bad, or neutral experience?
Well, overall, it was a really good experience, but it was really rough because it was self booked, mainly door deals. The experiences I got to it was Abiotic was also on their very first tour, and we were going through Miami, Florida, I think, and that's I got to met Abiotic like back before they were signed, and we played a show with them, and I met also on that tour I got to meet. He was the original bassist for Death, and he was playing in a band called Wormwood Prophecy. And that tour it was rough, and it it taught me a lot, but then it also like when you're prepared for the worst, the good things just when you experience the good things, it's so much better. Like as opposed to that tour, as in the first tour I did with Invoker, it was much easier than the very first tour that I did. Less rough on me, just taking from that experience the first time.
If you had to guess, how many shows have you played to date?
Oh man.
that was also David's response.
Oh God, man.
You could probably say one of the most absurd numbers, and I'll agree with you.
Oh man, I really don't know, man. Like, it's definitely in the hundreds.
Yeah, for sure. What are some of your favorite markets to play?
I love playing in Philly, Pittsburgh, Philly area, because the scene there is like so strong and so close knit, and kids beat the hell out of each other, and no one gets upset. So.
Yep, I experienced that in Philly at the Voltage Lounge.
Yep, the Voltage Lounge is the place, man. Las Vegas, there's a place called Eagle Erie Hall, and it's the scenes like it's predominantly like teenagers, and just seeing how close knit that scene is as well. Like Distinguisher comes from that scene. That's the first time we played there. We played with Distinguisher actually. Just seeing how close knit they are, it's like that's the way the scene should be everywhere. You know, it's fun. There's never any drama, which is a hard thing to find within a scene nowadays. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. We played there on the Macho Man tour, didn't we?
Yep.
Not knocking anybody or any sort of situation, but the thing that stood out to me the most was the Twin Towers with the eagle with the tear coming off of it.
With the tear from the yes.
And I don't mean any disrespect, but when you've been on the road for a while and you're really like just tired and like you're hungry and you walk into a place and you see that, you kind of have a mental breakdown. So, okay, we've mentioned that one, and that'll go into the next question. How about some of your favorite venues?
Dirty Dog in Austin, Texas.
Definitely a fun one. There's really not a bad venue out in Austin in general.
There really isn't. They have it used to be called Grizzly Hall, but Come and Take It Live is really awesome. It's a big venue, nice stage setup, great sound.
Yeah, that's been the number one answer so far on the show for favorite venues. Like, most people fired that one off right away, and I really would like to get Anthony on and talk to him about, what it's like to have people from all, walks of, metal and music hold all of his productions in such high regard, because that's just crazy. How about favorite city to have a day off in?
Austin. Probably my favorite place to go. Like, I don't know. It's because I guess it's completely different from home.
What would you consider to be the biggest rookie mistake being on tour?
Not bringing enough clothes and not bringing enough money on tour.
Case closed. How about the most underrated tour item to have on hand? I've always been of the mindset that you can never have too many charging bricks, because you never know when you're going to need it.
Oh God, yeah, man, because that's when tensions run high in the van. There's so Sean has this power brick, and he has all of these extension cables going into it. And I was trying to tell him, I'm like, listen, man, that's the reason nobody else's stuff is charging. So
not having proper power is the end of the world on tour.
Yeah.
All right, so the staple question this year on the show has been about Warped Tour. Kevin Lyman is calling it quits on Warped Tour after this year due to low turnouts and an aging demographic. What are your thoughts on Warped Tour coming to an end, and do you think the aging demographic is coming for bands in the lower and middle class markets?
I've always enjoyed Warped Tour, and I really don't understand how what he why he was saying aging demographic, because it was originally punk. Like the first year that I went, I saw Bad Religion, I saw No Effects, and I even got to see Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. But it was a weird mix of bands. But so I don't really understand why he says the aging demographic is a problem.
Yeah, it's interesting because a few people on the show have mentioned that it just kind of seems lazy to say that. If you feel that the aging demographic is an issue, then change your business model.
Exactly, which I thought that he was doing a fairly good job, with keeping up with newer bands and newer artists, because you see more trap artists and rappers and just different genres. Because I mean, and even heavier bands. Like, I got to see Black Dahlia Murder at Warped Tour. Like, that was insane. Like, it seems like it was still keeping on the up and up with appealing to the younger crowd, because I'd look at it and there'd be things on there that I never heard of, but then there'd be things that I was like, hell yeah, I'm going this year just for that. It seems like he had a lot for everyone, but I just don't understand why he's calling it quits.
Do you think the aging demographic is going to be an issue for the rest of us?
That's really hard to say, because and I guess yes and no, because it would really go back to the fan base at that point, like the die-hard fans, because I see it every day when sometimes kids they'll listen to a certain genre, and then they feel they've outgrown it, or it's cooler to be a part of this scene, a certain scene now.
Right.
But eventually they flip flop and they come back. It's I don't think it'll be a problem as long as, as long as we stay true to what we do, as long as we keep putting out music and I guess just appealing to what, not necessarily for a demographic, but like writing the music that we as musicians feel is good, like that makes us like if if you can't jam it, then no one else is going to jam it. If you can't jam your own stuff, no one else is going to jam it.
And I think
So
that's a fair answer. I'm kind of in the same boat with that. I think that concerts in general are going to change within the next 5-10 years. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing like, and I wouldn't say necessarily for bands at the lower level, but I guess in general, it wouldn't surprise me to see some weird hybrid where it's like bands are on tour and there's some people like at the show, but then there might also be like pay-per-view aspects because we're all just glued to our phones and to our TVs, and we have streaming services coming out of our ass on almost everything. And as it always seems to be, hey, we're going out on tour. Oh, I can't wait to watch it on YouTube. And it's like, cool. I'm about YouTube. I like finding our stuff on YouTube. But to not go just because you want to watch it on YouTube and you don't want to pay money, that's kind of an issue.
I saw something. I saw something the other day. Um, it was an article about how you can pay someone to experience things for you, like through a VR, like a VR headset. And I think they're actually going to be premiering it at what's it? It's not Bonnaroo. There's a festival like Bonnaroo, but it's going to premiere at one of those larger festivals like that, and it's you can watch the show and experience it through someone else's eyes. Essentially, they'll be wearing like a VR, or it's like some kind of headset, and you can see everything that's going on. But you pay them. It's almost like an Uber. Like it's almost like an Uber driver. Like
Wow. That's crazy. Now, great. That's the next new issue. So the current issue being kids getting up on stage and they want to take a selfie on stage while you're playing. Now you're going to have people rushing the stage with these huge VR headsets and like bumping into stuff. All right. So now, time for some of the worst moments in your career. Any horror stories from the stage?
Oh yeah. Okay. There was I'm trying to remember what we were playing our home venue, Ground Zero, which when you asked about venues, I almost forgot to mention that is definitely my favorite venue. Ground Zero in Spartanburg, South Carolina. We were playing. It was a big local show, and there was a sign that said "Do not step." And I'm just in the zone, like feeling it, and I step where the sign tells me not to step, and it goes all the way down. I fall all the way down to my crotch, and I'm still screaming. And then, like, I look and I see like my friends and like all these kids up front, and I'm like, shit, what do I do now? And I just like spring up and I pretended like it never happened. And then like I have this one friend, she's just a goofball. She just clowns the hell out of me all the time. And she's like, so what happened to you up there?
I can just imagine that.
That was so embarrassing.
But at least you recovered, though.
Yeah.
There'd be nothing worse than like, hey guys, I can't get out of here.
There's another funny one that happened to David, actually. He forgot his shoes in the van, and he was wearing flip flops. And we were getting ready to go on, and he told me to go get his shoes, and I couldn't find his shoes. And I was like, it's gonna be all right, man. Nobody's gonna notice it. And then we get on stage, and he's like trying to tell me to tell the sound guy. He's like, tell him to hit that fog machine to cover up my feet. And like I'm trying to wave him down, and like the same friend who was like clowning me for falling through that hole on stage, she's like, "Oh, David, what the hell do you have on? What are those?" And he's like scrambling, trying to get Jake's the sound guy's attention to get the fog to cover his feet up, and it was hilarious, man.
Oh, man.
He's like, as I'm telling him that no one's gonna pay attention, she just starts clowning him.
Oh, man. That's great. All right, this is going to be a new question that I haven't asked any other vocalist on the show. How about the most ignorant pit call you've ever done that afterwards you were like, man, why the hell did I say that?
Whoa, okay. I try to watch what I say now, but it was at White Oak in LA, and God, I'm just thinking about it now. And it is like you were talking about earlier. It's how you call the crowd out and stuff. And everyone was standing still, and I was trying to get them to move at that time. I was like, "You're standing around like a bunch of pussies. Show me how you bleed from that motherfucker." And I was like, "Oh my!" I try to tone it down a little bit now, but
that's so good.
I'm pretty sure there's a video floating around of that still too, probably.
Well, I'm going to look it up so I can share it for the episode. How about worst promoter or overall show situation you've been in?
Tyler Mitz. Tyler Mitz. This kid. Oh my God. It was in
Was that at the Rail 2?
Yes.
Okay, so that would have been in Peoria.
Yeah, Peoria. This kid he didn't have any of the money, like, whatsoever to pay us. And I'm like, we were trying to be civil with him, trying to get him to see if he could call someone to figure it out. And this, for lack of a better term, dipshit, like, hops in his car and like slings rocks all across the parking lot and peels out. And just dips out without giving us anything.
I remember that because I definitely was on the crusade like several other people, and we were like completely annihilating that dude's production page on Facebook with just fantastic 1-star reviews just to make sure that like that dude was out of business. Cause like with that tour in particular, it's all people that, regardless of where you're at in the, I guess we'll call it the food chain, people higher up and lower all respected that entire tour package. So to have that kind of bullshit going on is just like, nah, you're messing with family now. That's a problem. Just crazy. Dumbass kids who don't know what they're doing with shows. Hate it.
Exactly. And like, if you, that's my thing. If you, like, yeah, you want to book a show, you want to book a show and like for your friends and like the kids and like your neighborhood and your community, that's fine. But know what you're getting into before you take on that role. Put your big boy pants on, and what you agree to, stick to it. That's your merit as a man, to stick to your word.
All right, and lastly, the most random thing to happen on tour or at a show?
We were in Bremerton, Washington, and John Huber, the original vocalist of I Declare War and Pathology, he showed up. He showed up to our show, and he's like standing there chilling, and these kids like start wailing on him, like trying to jump him, and he just annihilates these kids. Just wrecks every last one of them, and he's covered in blood. And then like I go to the bathroom, and he's in there like washing the blood off from his face and his arms, and he's like, "You guys had a killer set, man." I was like, "Holy shit!" Like John Huber's like complimenting my band, and he's just like covered in these kids' blood, like he just went through a war.
Okay, so talking about most random thing to happen on tour or whatever at a show, it was the Macho Man tour, and it was the very last date, and we were in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And I remember, you know, as it is with the last date of any tour, you're super stoked to go home, but you're also bummed out because you're leaving everybody. And
Oh, I remember this day.
and I remember it was you, me, and I think Nate. We were dicking around over by that upright piano, and you know, we're all having a good laugh. And one of the locals happened to be, you know, all the guys in that band were black, and you know, we're hanging out, and someone made this old dude made a joke, and out of nowhere, and we're all like, oh, ha ha ha. And I remember he looked right over at you, and he was like, he says, hey brother, great set. And you engaged the handshake, and you said, I haven't played yet. And it was this older white guy, and let me tell you, he became even whiter after he said that, which was so bad. And I remember that, like, he overcompensated so hard. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm you know, he's stuttering. And like, did you ever see the movie Get Out?
Yes.
Like, I totally could imagine him being like they made the joke in that movie. Like, oh, if we could have elected Obama one more time, I would have. You know, it was just like the most cringiest shit ever. And like, we both know that dude didn't mean any harm by that, but it was just like,
oh yeah,
damn it, man, this is literally the last day of tour, and this is what we get to remember it by. Oh man, so bad, so shot.
Because I remember the band that he thought I was in.
Yeah.
Because I took a picture with their vocalist, and he's like, I'm a short dude, but he's like 2 feet shorter than me.
Oh man, that God, I know we still talk about that incident like a lot. Just as like, man, well, if we think we have it bad right now, remember when Dustin had to put up with that? Oh man. All right, so I'm curious to hear what advice you'd have for a few groups of people, and for starters, how about local bands?
Now, granted, not every band that plays a show is gonna be a dead serious band about touring or anything, but if you're doing it for fun, still take pride in it, and take pride in your equipment and the material you produce and put out.
How about promoters?
Stick to your fucking word. like if you have an agreement, you stick to it. Do not deviate from it. You stick to it.
And lastly, how about bands hitting the road for the first time?
There's a preconceived notion that it's going to be like one giant party, and it is not. It is, although it is fun, it is also work, and you have to treat it as such. You have to treat it as not only is it's like your escape from the rest of the world, but it's also a job, and you have things to uphold. You're also an entertainer, so you can't be going on stage all fucked up and stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
you got to have that fine line of business and pleasure. All right, so before we go, let's do a quick plug for the big three: Filth, Invoker, and Impale the Betrayer. Where can people find you guys?
You can find all of our music on iTunes, Apple Music, Google Play, Spotify, and YouTube.
Dustin, thank you so much for being on the show. Looking forward to what all you dudes are going to be achieving this year, and hopefully we'll be seeing you all very soon.
Thank you, man. It was an honor to be on the show today.
That concludes this episode. Thank you to Dustin for coming on the show. Check out the big three: Filth, Invoker, and Impale the Betrayer. Reminder again that the show will be running through some lighter episodes for a few weeks, but it'll be back in regular rotation before you know it. I've been your host, Noah Sias, and as always, thank you for listening.